Which, give it a sec. Okay, yeah,
we're live.
Like we are live for Accademia Giallo, the Halloween edition. I guess it's All Hallows Eve. Is that right? Did I get that
That's
right?
a thing. That's a thing.
Okay. Well, so yes, Halloween is tomorrow. So we are doing a live Sunday school edition of an Italian thriller called It's called Wake Me When There's a Kill. I'm sorry. Watch Me When I Kill.
Hey,
I'm showing my hand.
This is your favorite October view of all, right?
We'll get into all of it, gang. But before that, we got some housekeeping. This is the postscript to the Scare-a-Thon live streams, which we were doing every Friday in October.
Sure.
But this is sort of the last Kicking the Seat live stream for Scare-a-Thon 2022. But folks have been keeping up the Scare-a-Thon thing all month long. And by folks, I mean Aaron Christensen of Horror 101 with Dr. AC. Every year, he watches a bunch of horror films in order to raise awareness and funds for a great cause. And this year is no exception. AC, tell us what you will about RAP.
We have 2 more days left to Scare-a-Thon 2022. We have raised over $5,000 at this point for the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. RAP is the organization acronym. And the donation link is below in the description. And again, you've got two more days in which you can make a contribution. And please remember that, $5 does make a difference. So don't feel like, I don't want to donate because I can't donate a substantial amount of money. If everybody watching did $5, we would be already past $10,000. So thank you all for everybody who has donated already. And if you haven't, give it a shot.
Excellent. And congratulations on getting this far. As AC mentioned, it's 2 more days to go. So it's running through, I guess, midnight Halloween or something, or
November 1st is when it'll wrap up. Excellent.
All right. I still have to make my contribution. So I'll probably do that this afternoon. Thanks everyone for joining. And if you're watching live, feel free to jump into the chat. We'll be taking all comments and discussing them. Who do I have here today? Well, I'm Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We've got AC, as we mentioned. We got John Kitley of Kitley's Crypt. And we also have Brian Martinez of the Giallo Room. So, gang, thanks for coming back and joining me on another Sunday monthly live stream. Yes, I'm a day ahead of everybody. I'm so excited for Halloween.
That's right.
But all right, I feel like I've been punked. I specifically remember at the end of the last episode, I said, gang, let's get back into the sleaze, the graphic violence, the nudity, the dripping essence of some of these gialli that we've discussed. And I feel like there was a disconnect because was it Brian? Did you recommend this movie? Was this you?
Yeah, I did.
Well,
why do you hate me? No, sorry. Okay.
To be fair, this is very much, there's a lot of giallo in this. There's a lot of it just kind of hits all the numbers. Minus, there's no overt nudity, but other than that, I feel like we do get a lot of gialli kind of trademarks. So I feel like Brian did deliver on his promise.
Okay, technically, yes. There is murder, there is blood, there's no nudity, but this might be a record, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are 2 instances of J&B Scotch showing up in this film. So I think that kind of makes up for the lack of flesh, at least in my mind. I was so thrilled. But okay, so Brian, set this movie up for me. What is Watch Me When I Kill? And also clarify, when did this movie come out? Because on IMDb, it says 1982, but then on some other thing I was looking at, it said 1977. Is this one of those things that came out in Italy in 77, then took 5 years to make its way across the pond, or is someone just wrong here?
Yeah, no, it came out in 77.
Okay.
I believe this is Antonio Bido's his debut in terms of the genre, Giallo. He did come out in the next year with a better film, I think, The Bloodstained Shadow. That's the one that he's more known for. This one is just like I remembered it being way better.
Thanks for the ride there, Brian.
And had I remembered how painfully slow this movie was, I probably would have recommended the Dario Argento movie, which is streaming right now on Shudder, just to kind of get back into that kind of flavor or whatever. But this one basically it's a dancer, and she witnesses not really outright witnesses a murder. She goes off to like stop her driver at some drugstore at some random Walgreens.
Yep.
And comes across like a murder, and then from there on it's just a whodunit kind of thing. I will say there are certain parts of this movie that I really enjoy. I like the boyfriend, the mustached guy.
Yeah.
I think
he's like they were trying to do like a Charles Bronson thing with him almost. Yeah, it was kind of cool.
Yeah. I liked his presence throughout the movie. I think I wish they would have utilized him a little bit better. In terms, like, I feel like they're going for like Black Belly of the Tarantula kind of role for him in terms of like being like a police presence or detective presence, and he's trying to figure out what's going on.
Who is he? Because I mean, like I feel like I would have liked to have seen him, like you. I would have liked to have seen him in other things, because he does have a kind of a fun, loose quality to him.
Yeah. I haven't seen him in anything else.
Okay.
But
I didn't recognize anything in his filmography, and I was like, where is this guy?
I know this movie is really misleading, like in terms of Watch Me When I Kill. Nobody watches anybody when they kill in this movie. And then there's the alternate title. I forget what it's called, but it's something about.
Does it come to the door and listen to where I've committed a crime, but don't actually witness anything? But I'm going to get really paranoid and I'll track you down.
It's the cat with the jade eyes.
Yeah, the cat with the jade eyes.
Right.
If that's not more confusing.
I'm sure that has nothing to do with the fact that he was trying to copy Argento.
Yeah.
Right. And to John's point, I'm not sure if it's a point, but this movie does do that, like in terms of it tries very, very hard to be like, hey, there's one more Giallo in the 70s kind of thing.
But it's really late in the cycle too. It's just like, guys, come on, man.
Yeah, and there's no real significant Giallo that comes out within this particular time period, other than a couple of years later when Argento comes back with Tenebrae. But so this one, it's sort of like, for lack of a better term, a fart in the wind when it comes to the Giallo genre, right? Because it's trying to ignite things, but had that. Go ahead.
Lighting farts is where I'm going with this, and I'm like, wow, I had not anticipated that's where this conversation was going. Why did you pick this movie, Brian? Like, what were you like? Oh, this is the one.
I remember it being much more. I think I was thinking more so Giallo in Venice.
Okay.
It confused me because in the poster art for this one, there's a gentleman committing a murder, and then you see like somebody screaming in his sunglasses or whatever. There's actually a scene in that in Giallo in Venice, so I think I kind of mixed things up in my head. So that one is a lot more akin to what Ian was looking for in terms of sleaziness, in terms of just you want to take a shower after you watch that movie.
Who directed that one? That's okay.
I forget. I don't have my notes with me. Yeah. But yeah, this one it's honestly like Antonio Bido. I think he was setting himself up to direct a much more mature version of Giallo. So that's why you don't get a lot of the Hallmark sleaze, the Hallmark gore, the Hallmark. I do love the soundtrack in this movie. I love the music in this movie. It's almost like
Goblin.
It's almost Goblin-esque, but it's not Goblin.
Well, Big Swifty 500 writes in to say a bit slow. Granted, no nudity and none of our
There you
stunningly
go.
beautiful Italian ladies, but a great soundtrack.
Yeah.
A deep red knockoff, but it's watchable.
We
would-
and
agree.
that's the thing. It's
I would disagree with that
totally
last
watchable.
bit, but look,
No, I think it's a
I
good
watched
movie.
it.
I think
I mean,
it's a
you know.
solid. It's a solid attempt at a Giallo film.
Attempt,
it's,
yes.
Antonio Bido does. He is a competent filmmaker, especially if you consider Bloodstained Shadow. I think that's a way better movie. But this one, if you try to separate it from like it being just a straight up Giallo without any of the crazy hallmarks or whatever, I think it's an enjoyable movie. Would I watch it again? Would I purchase an $80 Synapse special edition Blu-ray slipcover or whatever? Probably not.
You can watch it for free on Tubi.
as
And it's
I
And it's
look at-
actually available
It's
on
a-
Shudder as well.
And it's a pretty cleaned up version of it. John was saying that the one he watched
Yeah,
was really
The
Oh.
VCI DVD is horrible. It is so dark that you can't see half of the film.
I want to say the Synapse version is available on Shudder.
Well,
'cause
that's
it's
why I figured
really-
it showed up on Tubi as well.
Yeah, it's really good looking. And that's the thing. Like, I think as a casual Giallo fan, if you walk into this movie, it's not like it's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth. It's just it's not as flamboyant
As
and
Ian
flashy.
reaches for something to swish.
Ian, what did you think of? What are your thoughts of this film?
He's been so subtle up to this point.
I'm relieved that it's not just me, but I feel like it might be just me in my. This is gonna sound harsh. I have an utter disdain for this movie, but I think that's partly because I feel like if there was such a thing as like a Giallo anthology TV series with like half-hour mysteries, this would have been perfect because I like the setup. I kind of liked the problem is there's too much setup with too many characters, and like everybody who appears on screen, there's like a long-winded investigation / conversation about whether or not they're the killer. And after a while, that gets really old. And it was the last 5 minutes of this movie that, when we finally figure out what the hell is going on, which I'm convinced is so out of left field that it might as well have been space aliens. I love the explanation, but I don't feel like there was enough setup. I mean, they did. Hold on. I'm going to put up the spoiler banner because we're going to get into this. I just gotta. Okay. The idea that there are people being kind of knocked off, in jolly fashion, is great. There's a connection to, it turns out a lot of the victims were on a jury for this killer who recently escaped from a prison work farm. So maybe that's it. That's the obvious setup. But it turns out that that's not the killer. And the killer turns out being hired as a bodyguard for the damsel in distress at the very end of the movie. And that the real culprit is one of the old characters who, honestly, I'd forgotten by the time he shows up at the very end. I'm like, I thought he died in the bathtub. No, that was the other guy, and he didn't have a mustache or something. But it turns out, if I have this correct, his family were, they were Jews, I believe, in the Holocaust. And the apartment, the house that they were staying in, they had these neighbors who sold the family out to the Nazis. And this guy's wife and daughters were, gassed, and died horribly. That's totally redundant. I'm sorry, but so he's sort of playing the long game, like decades later, going after these people and exacting revenge. And it turns out his son is the instrument of all of this, death and mayhem. And as it turns out, the lady who has been in fear of her life this entire time, and her boyfriend who takes on the role of investigator, they're almost like complete red herrings because they have nothing to do with the main plot, and they're totally fine because at the very end, the old man shoots his son and then shoots himself, and then the movie's just over, which I have mad respect for.
Literally over. Like boom,
Right.
boom, done.
Right. You see I think their son gets shot like almost off screen.
Right.
And then the old man shoots himself off screen. You just have a close up of the desk and his head plops down. You see the bullet hole and then credits start rolling.
Yeah.
I almost stood up from my bed and applauded. Partially because I was like, yay, end credits.
Yeah.
But no,
it's over.
right. And that's the thing is like, I love the idea of this. It's sort of like a Munich Giallo or something, but
and like that particular reveal, like if there was an award for best convoluted shoehorned, like, but actually what the fuck kind of ending, like I think this movie would definitely be in the running for it.
Well, I pictured like the guy running in with the last page of the script. Like, I just had a great idea. This is why all the murders right here.
Or the camera
Nazis.
operators, going, Anthony, I got like 3 minutes of film left, but that's it. Okay, boom, 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 done. Roll credits.
Oh man, well that's the thing. Like, I thought it was kind of sad that the son wanted to, he was all game to kill our protagonist because they're witnesses.
Right.
Father and son had kind of achieved their revenge plot, but then there's these loose ends, and the dad is like. So, kind of like no more killing. Right. Then he shoots his son and then himself.
Well, there's no more killing after that.
Right. So that was kind of nice. But again, I feel like if this was a half-hour show, because a good example is, and I was describing this to my wife, there's a scene not too long before this where our investigator guy Lucas is walking around this big house or building, and he's going into a bunch of rooms.
Gosh.
And he's just like seeing all these empty rooms, like this room's completely empty, go to the next one. This room's completely empty, go to the next one. And then he comes across, he hears music, and he finds this room, and there's a whole bunch of old ladies listening to a slightly younger old lady sing opera, and they just pan slowly around this room, and half the old people in it are falling asleep.
So all of them are asleep.
And I'm like, I feel you, sisters. And then he just leaves the room like.
No, but that's just the beginning of it. Like there's like 3 or 4 of these like just like completely non sequitur scenarios where he's just investigating, and it's like investigating 101. Go into rooms, find things, leave. Go into another room, find things, leave. And it's like none of this has anything to tie into. But it was just like, we're going to eat up the time here. Keep going.
He was looking for the plot.
Yeah, yeah. But I was kind of like. Go ahead.
No, well, I was gonna say, like, it's funny that John said that, because like I would like agree. Midway through the movie, I'm watching it and I'm like, man, I don't remember there not being a plot to this movie. Like, it's just very super loose. It's just kind of we're going along with what's going on screen.
I loved how gonzo it was, though, just in terms of like, we're just gonna pad this sucker out,
Yeah.
We got 90 minutes to fill, so. Keep that feathered hair going and that awesome mustache, and we're just gonna keep you moving.
Like, it's funny. This movie has parts Black Belly of the Tarantula. It's got parts to it where it reminds you of what's that movie?
Other better movies.
But there's like, it's almost like there's segments from this movie taken from better movies,
Well, and the soundtrack sounds like, like you said, it sounds like another movie. I come like, have I heard this? Like, do we know what he's riffing on here? Because I feel like it is so reminiscent of another movie score.
Goblin. I mean, he's obviously
this is
but like which Goblin?
Deep Red.
It is Deep Red. Okay.
Yeah, because this came out.
You feel that bass.
2 years later, and that's now. Granted, the Watch Me When I Kill was the American retitle, which I'm not surprised that it doesn't match the film. It's just a good exploitive title.
Yep.
But with the original title of The Cat with the Jade Eyes, still means nothing in the film, other than every time a murder happens, you see a quick insert of a cat face.
Was that? But they never. I thought it was a wolf or something.
See, I could have sworn it was a cat. And maybe because of I knew what the title was, that's what I saw. But it's never ties into anything other than maybe him trying to play into Argento's Animal trilogy.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's why I think he was really like literally watching the trilogy and Deep Red and going, okay, we got to have him wandering around in a house. Okay,
Yep.
do that, and then we got to have him. We got to do this, and it. I agree with Brian that it's not a terrible film, but it is not a great film. And I would agree that Bloodstained Shadow is much better. And maybe by that time he had learned a few things and to be a little bit more self-sufficient on his own as opposed to copying other people.
Well, I almost envision like the producers or somebody like who had money saying, "Oh, remember that Argento movie Deep Red?
Yeah.
You're going to do this one."
From
And it
last
could be.
year.
It could be.
and we're gonna title it this because this is what it means with the genre and blah. Like, and meanwhile, Antonio is just trying to make a coherent
Right.
movie.
Right.
See, full disclosure, like this morning, like John and I were doing my show, and I like went, so this Watch Me When I Kill, like why do you think Brian picked that one? I sent out like a list of like 10 other titles, and Brian was just like, Watch Me When I Kill.
I threw that
like,
out there.
All right.
I threw that out there last month, and everybody was like, "Ooh," you know. And I mean,
Well,
you could have totally went with.
Well, that's the thing is like,
because
because when I had asked that call about like, give me some sleaze, like there is, that is such a sleazy title.
fair.
Watch Me When I Kill. I was like, oh, that's probably it. Yeah.
Yeah.
To be fair, I had Giallo and Venice in mind.
Okay.
So
Yeah, totally.
that's-
That's
Is that
fine.
fair though?
What's
I'm
up?
gonna say it's fair, just in the spirit of
I'm like,
collegiality.
to be
Because-
fair, I was totally wrong. Oh,
we would
like,
totally be talking
fair.
about completely different subject matter if we watched that movie.
If only I had done my research. Yeah.
Um,
I love you, Brian. I still do. I always will.
No, you don't. No, you
I
don't.
do.
No,
I do.
You absolutely
I
don't.
wish I could stop loving you, but I
Oh.
can't.
Please.
I'm gonna keep on loving you because that's the only thing I want to do.
Is it the only thing you want to do? Because I want to do something else, like watch Giallo in Venice now.
Oh, dude, what we should do is I should have like a fire alarm special effect, like someone pulls the fire alarm, so you have to leave class early, and then we resume next.
Well, because we're tapped out with this movie, right? In terms of discussion, right?
I'm
No.
just getting started. But
Let me ask Ian. Let me ask you,
Yeah.
Ian. At this point of the Accademia Giallo game, and you see a movie like this, it's actually impressive that you take a look at this movie and you're like, this isn't as sleazy or as like Giallo-esque as what I was demanding or whatever. So in this stage of this show, when you view a movie like this, what are the things that you're looking for when you watch a movie like Watch Me When I Kill?
I mean, the weird thing is, I think my biggest gripe with this movie is that I don't have a problem necessarily with a couple of red herrings and then some stuff that doesn't make sense until it all ties together at the end. I just feel like there was way too much of the stuff that didn't, ultimately matter in the resolution. And I think this is not, I've been too harsh on it. It's not a bad film. I just think it needs a better edit. For example, like, what am I looking for? Here's a good example. I feel like knowing the whole like Nazi, concentration camp kind of revenge resolution to the movie, it makes me think back on the kills. And I don't know if this was accidental or if I'm just making stuff up, but I feel like if they had tied the murders into more of that kind of,
Sure.
as gruesome as it is, historical aesthetic, it would have been more impressive. Because, like, look at the one lady, Esmeralda, she dies in an oven.
Mhm.
You look at the guy in the bath, the people died in the showers, in concentration camps.
Mhm.
If you had just kind of tied those things in more to give at least some kind of a hint as to what the deal was, maybe I would have been a bit more impressed. But I just kind of
You
One
just
thing.
connected it in ways that I had completely not even thought about the oven
Yeah,
and the shower
yeah.
thing. So nice job, Ian.
well, that's the thing. I'm just spitballing. I don't know if
Yeah,
that was
no,
even intentional or not.
I like that because to my mind, I was watching, the whole scalding by casserole, and I was like, okay, that actually is something I haven't seen before. And anybody who's like, burned themselves like on like hot gooey cheese and tomato sauce that you can't get off your hands quickly enough, or it burns your mouth. I'm like, that actually is awful. Like if you had your face in a casserole that was scalding hot, like that would be horrible. And I went, I've not seen that before. So, I gave him a tip of the hat to that. I had somebody strangled with, like a shower the hose before. I was like, okay, even though that guy is, I mean, all apologies to your mother and father, my friend, but like that is one weird looking dude.
He is, and also it's strange that this may have been for effect, or maybe water was just different in Italy back then. But that it looked like he was taking a bath in toilet bowl cleaner.
Yeah,
That
right.
was the bluest water.
The bath salts were flowing that day. But yeah, it's like he's got the palest skin ever, and like we just spend a lot of time like with him in the bathtub. And I was like, okay, equal opportunities, I suppose.
I will say I perked up. Not that I want to see anything bad happen to people, but that was a particularly impressive kill. Not necessarily the kill, but the setup of it. Like he's listening to, again, like bombastic opera, and he's in the bathtub. I think the radio is in another room, and he's got it. He's kind of got it up. When the killer enters the apartment, he cranks it up, and you see the guy in the bathroom, like his eyes go wide, like, oh shit, there's someone else in here with me. And during this whole strangulation scene, it's set to this wonderful, music. It's like it's a cool death, even though it's horrifying. Yeah,
I agree.
And so that's the thing. It's like that's the frustrating part about this. To your point, Brian, is I think there is a lot of giallo in this movie, and there's some really impressive stuff going on. But compared to some of the other mysteries that we've seen, it bothers me. Like, okay, the one it's when Mara, who's our main kind of protagonist, who is being stalked, or she thinks she's being stalked. There's a scene straight out of Blood and Black Lace involving a wardrobe where she's in there, the wardrobe department. It's kind of like this winding, twisting room. There's all this creepy stuff in it, and the killer is in there with her. But at one point, she's just kind of like walking out, and this mannequin or something falls in front of her, and she freaks out. But then it turns out that it was actually the guy that had just had his throat slit, who was leaning up against the wall. Like, it's just one too many things for it to be like a scare. Like, just have either the dead body fall in front of her, or there's no dead body, and it's just like she's freaked out and she gets away. It just.
Can we talk about Mara for a second? Because she's one of the most unsympathetic. Like she's just really self-absorbed. Like the way she's like, I know we had a date, but don't be mad. And it's like, I'm like, wait, what? Like, she just kind of like breezes through this movie as like feeling entitled and beautiful. And I'm like, you're supposed to be the person I'm empathizing with or sympathizing with.
Well,
I
she's
did empathize with her. I am also entitled and beautiful. So I was on Team Mara from scene one.
She reminds me of the element from Death Walks on High Heels. That's what I was trying to remember before. But that whole that character almost feels like that element was lifted from that movie and put into this movie. In terms of like just being a show person that this person is like ogling over. And so like the elements are set up a bit differently in that movie, but I think it's very similar in that regard in terms of like she kind of moves in with him because she's afraid that somebody's chasing her or whatever. So there are elements, like I said, from much better films that show up in this movie. So it's definitely a Frankenstein hodgepodge of giallo movies. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think this movie is necessarily a bad movie. It's just it's a very dry movie in comparison to the other films of the genre.
So you could almost call it "Watch Me While I Steal." But
that's good.
Thank you. But no, a great example of why this thing is so kind of all over the place is early on in the film. Mara is, we see it's actually the opening kind of credits after the pharmacy scene, I think, right? And that whole murder, right? That happens first, and then they have the opening. Okay. She's dancing, and she's approached by this director / producer and this other guy, like, hey, we want you to be in our show. There's some kind of negotiation there, and they're both kind of like enamored with her. And then we meet, Lucas kind of backstage, and I'm like, okay, so this is going to be a movie about a woman who's getting into showbiz or making a transition in showbiz, and she's witnessed this murder. So it's going to be like a big showbiz production. Nope. Like a half hour later, we cut back to like her doing something on stage. I'm like, oh yeah, wasn't this supposed to involve like
That's
showbiz
right.
somehow? It's like this
Yeah.
5-minute scene. I'm like, what is this movie? And then we just
Well,
get
and
more
that's
of
when they
Lucas
bring
walking
back
around.
those two characters who kind of just have disappeared from the movie. They come back again. It's like, okay, well, we need at least one of them for the end of the movie, so we should probably remind people that they are in this movie.
That's exactly it. It's just a rule of 3 setup. I feel like they finished the movie and then they realize like, wait, no one's gonna remember who this guy is. Quick, do we still have that stage set? Yes.
Plus, that was the son, if I'm not mistaken. That's Paulo Malco, right, from House by the Cemetery and New York
Is
Ripper.
Looked familiar.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of fun where Pasquale Ferranti, the killer who had escaped from the work prison or the prison work farm, he gets our hero Lucas at gunpoint and walks him out to this cliff, right? And he's like, jump or I shoot. Either way, he's dead. But so at the end of the movie, we're meant to believe that Lucas asks/hires this guy who had almost shot/pushed him off of a cliff,
Right.
and who is still an escaped convict.
Yep.
Like there is no situation where it's like, oh yeah, this guy's totally cool. You know, it doesn't matter that he's the cops are totally fine with him just walking around. They're like, yeah, go watch my girlfriend. Like, and there was the situation where Mara was in her house. And Lucas is driving frantically back to her house because he realized he's been in the wrong place the whole time. The killer breaks in and strangles her from behind, but then someone else busts in and they start attacking and rolling each other around. And I feel like this was a matter of like a storytelling problem because we had to obscure the identities of both people because we couldn't reveal who the killer was, but we also wanted it to be a surprise that Ferranti was, protecting her that whole time. But what we get is like these really awkward tumbling close-ups of like people in jeans like squabbling, and she's just standing there with the gun.
Yeah, that was the most bananas fight scene I'd ever. I was like, "What is happening?" Like it's just like like a third grader fight where they're just like rolling around on like the lawn.
Right, and then Ferrante comes out and he's like, "Oh yeah, Lucas hired me to watch you, just to make sure nothing happened." And I was just waiting for it to be like, "Aren't you supposed to be in jail? Like, didn't you try and kill my boyfriend? What do you mean you're supposed to protect me? How long have you been sitting outside my house?"
Even the setup in the very beginning of the murder, she's not even a witness. She never even sees anybody other than the silhouette in the door
and his voice, right?
And his disguised, Donald Duck voice.
Yeah. Come back later.
But then when she goes back to the car, he's in the. If I remember correctly, he's then sitting in the car watching her leave.
Yeah, he's nowhere near.
So yeah, that whole opening is completely ineffective when you compare to somewhat better giallos where sometimes you actually see the killer, but we just don't realize it, or there's a clue that we need to figure out. Here, you're like, what does this have to do with these people? How the hell did they get sucked into this mystery when there is no mystery?
Well, it's just a super paranoid killer who's like, oh, wait, I was in town with that guy. He was in the same city as me. I better go get him because he might have been, somewhere around.
There's a line when, Lucas is walking around just talking to everybody, apparently, asking about this, their connection to this murder. And he stumbles across Esmeralda's dad. She's the one who got killed in the oven. And he says, when you've found something true, just look behind you and you'll find you're back at the beginning again. And I was like, that is the perfect metaphor for this movie.
I did like that phrase.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like a Giallo fortune cookie if they had that. Yeah.
Another thing that they were throwing in from your typical Giallo is there's the one line where Lucas says about the police are incompetent. So we're not even going to involve them because they're stupid. So we're going to have to figure it out, which is another key element in a lot of the Giallos, that it's always someone that's not an authority or a police. It has to be the amateur detective. But that's the only clue or the only key in this whole thing is, the cops are dumb. Let's do it ourselves.
Hey,
does
AC.
what does Lucas do? I'm sorry, Brian. Make your point, and we'll come back.
He's a part-time Charles Bronson impersonator.
Are you typing out all the movies that you recommended over this movie in the chat?
No, I'm throwing it out there. just so we all have it.
Because I'll tell you right now, Orgasmo is not better than this movie.
But it's private. It's private. It's private. It's just for us. It's just for us.
Okay. Actually, Big Swifty says I vote for Red Queen for next month.
There you go. It's on AC's
on the
list
list.
right here.
Hang on.
It's on the list.
If you really wanted to tie something in, So Sweet, So Perverse is Umberto Lenzi.
Mm-hmm.
That's also on this list right here.
Can I finish? Okay.
Oh, shit.
Directed by Umberto Lenzi, who our good friend Troy Howarth just has his new book on Umberto Lenzi.
Is it out?
Yes, it is out.
I would rather do Spasmo.
See, Brian's got to argue. I just do this perfect setup with a new
because
guest.
it's such a good movie.
I would rather do Spasmo.
We still got Christmas. I mean, we got November, December left to go.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I don't want to call anybody out, but I was waiting because we had Troy on like a while ago, and we're gonna try and have him on when his book came out. I totally missed that bit. When did the book come out? I feel like I missed something.
Within the last month. It's relatively new. Yeah.
Well, hell, I'll have to see.
It's not like anything was going on in October.
I think he literally got his copy.
Yeah.
Right. That's what he posted the other day.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, then I'll have to see if we can get him on to talk about that.
That could be our Christmas. That could be our Christmas special, so everybody knows what to buy.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. That's great marketing, AC. That's great marketing.
We'll get each other a copy of the book for Christmas. It'll be the gift of the Gialli Magi.
It's called giving people what they want, Brian. Which
and actually, if I could say, if I could throw this in there, Spasmo has things hanging from trees, right? So it's kind of like a Christmas movie. No, I don't want to give it away, but it definitely has things hanging from trees.
All right. Well, any Lenzi is appreciated.
There we go.
Yes.
As Big Swifty. All right. So yeah, now I've got some more homework to do after.
Why don't I
episode.
have Spasmo on that list?
I don't. Oh, is that a dig at Brian?
No. I'm saying I like Spasmo. I think it's pretty good.
Watch Ian. Do me a favor.
Yeah.
If you don't know what the hell Spasmo is, watch the trailer. Watch the long trailer.
Oh my! Well, that's just a fun one. It's like right up the torso.
God. Right? It's great.
Spasmo trailer.
I would almost say like let's just talk about the trailer instead of the movie.
Well, if we could have Spasmo, Orgasmo, and Torso, like that would just be the triple threat.
It sounds like the three ghosts from the Casper movie, which I watched yesterday.
Whoa! Hey.
Jesus.
They had a ghost named Orgasmo.
Well,
I don't know which ghost movies you're watching, but
it's all about the white stuff. Am I right? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hello.
Things hanging from trees. Enough said. All
Thanks,
right.
Big Swifty. Save us.
All right. Well, I wrote pages and pages of notes, but I feel like we've covered a lot of stuff. So
those are probably more entertaining.
Yeah.
Like here's a good example. Like I watched this movie is an hour and 35 minutes long. I got through the first hour.
When you consider that, it's like, oh, this is gonna fly right by.
No, that's the ending, which takes place in the last 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, this movie is like one of those TARDIS movies. Like you're like, oh, it's only an hour and 35 until you get inside. It's like 6.5 hours long.
Right. What did I do with my life?
But no, I watched this. I started at like 4:30 this morning. I'm like, this is gonna get me going. It's some good Giallo, yeah. and then I got an hour into it. Like, okay, I'm gonna go do some other things.
I'm gonna do laundry.
Hey, were you in my house? Were you the Ferrante this morning?
Don't say anything.
But no, so I came back to watch.
Well,
I came back to watch it later in the morning, and I was like, okay, 35 minutes, I can do it. I watched 15 more minutes, and I'm like, I literally need to take a nap. So I took a 15-minute power nap and then muscled through the last 10 minutes, only to find that last 10 minutes and specifically the last 5 were just like, oh my God, this is the adrenaline shot that I needed.
Yep.
Man. But yeah, what else do we want to talk about for Watch Me When I Kill?
I mean, again, I think, as has been said, There are some good elements in it.
Mhm.
And
AC, talk slow because we got 20 minutes.
I know I
left.
got to stretch this out.
We don't. This could be. This could be.
We're just
You know,
gonna do like a
our
20-minute
October class,
roundtable
Halloween
of like
class.
what our next movie is going to be.
There you go.
But I was going to say that, I mean, and my friend and author Doug Lamoureux has said that like horror is the genre that is made up of moments. You know, like whereas other genres I think are judged by like the film as a whole. Whereas like there are moments in horror that you're like, yeah, it's not a great movie, but you need to see this. I don't know if there's any moment in here that you're like, I got to see this. This makes the whole thing worthwhile. But I feel like there are moments in it that you will take away, like, you know, the casserole kill, the shower hose, you know, like things like that, where I'm like, okay,
The
you know,
soundtrack.
like the well, again, I would just probably pop in Deep Red and be like, okay, that was awesome. But if I didn't feel like paying royalties, then yes, I could probably borrow this one.
I will say this movie. So the newest horror movie that I've seen, I haven't been out to theaters, I haven't been streaming stuff or whatever, but I did notice that Halloween Ends movie is on Peacock, and I watched it, and then I watched this one afterwards, and
Today?
I don't know if it's because what's that?
Today or just recently?
No, last week.
Oh, okay.
Sometime last week or whatever. I don't know if it's because like I am literally plugged into Jolly, where it's like that's just my natural like how you say what's the word
Your natural
aphrodisiac.
Oh, sure.
For the mind, of course. But this movie is way better than Halloween Ends. I don't know if there's any fans in the house.
I would agree 100% with Brian on that. This might be the first time, but I agree 100%.
Because
even better, I haven't seen the new Halloween film.
Oh my god! I thought we were gonna have a moment, but no, like
well, we had a moment. Like
I was watching Halloween Ends, and there are things that are painfully like the writer didn't know what else to do other than to throw this in here and, you know, forcefully attach it to horror or like the slasher genre or the entire mythology of Michael Myers or whatever. There's things to do that John Carpenter did so well, because in the ways that he does it, it's very subtle. So if you kind of compare it to this movie, this is kind of what it does in that same fashion, where it's like, and not as badly as Halloween Ends, I might add, but this one tends to like try to forcefully shoehorn this into the Giallo genre, and then you have a director that's trying to think of something else in a much more, you know, I don't know, mature cinematic kind of way or whatever. Because this movie never reaches the levels of sleaze or like they had a really perfect opportunity to do the whole exploitative Nazi angle, because this is the 70s and 70s, like we're pumping out
was in full swing at that point.
Yeah. They were cranking out just crazy shit out in the 70s.
Yep.
So they had a perfect opportunity to at least take it to that level, to make it that interesting or whatever. But Bido is very firm in terms of like, nope, this is going to be a very not standard, but just a highbrow affair or whatever.
Well, is he firm, or does he just not have the courage of convictions, or is he just
maybe that's the case?
I mean, because I think about like, you know, like what makes a chef is the ability to kind of sense how far he can go with it. He or she can go with a flavor, you know, to make it what they want, as opposed to, it feels like Bido's kind of following the recipe.
Yeah,
you know, like he's not experimenting, he's not pushing. He's like, this is I've seen enough Giallo to know that this is in the game plan. This is within the lines. It'll be fine.
Right. And we don't see him take that mantle of like chef until Bloodstained Shadow, where it's like, oh, okay, this is where he was hiding the entire time. This is him voicing his thing or whatever. Where he doesn't do that in this movie, you know.
Well, again, it could be like you mentioned earlier, Brian. Maybe he had interference from the producers or suggestions, or maybe this was him kind of getting his feet wet And by the time he got to Bloodstained Shadows, he went, okay, I know what I want to do, and I want to try to be a little bit more original on my aspect as opposed to hitting all the key elements like following Argento. So I think this is like for a freshman attempt.
Yeah,
it's not a terrible film.
No.
But it's not. If you were seeking out, for example, if Ian, we would have suggested this as the very first film in this series, I think it would have been the last film in the series, because Ian would have gone, I'm done. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
No.
Yeah. Well, but my point is,
but the thing is that there are much worse
better
movies
ones
that we've seen.
Well, yes, but this, and you know what? This is actually worse than that, because if it's bad, then it's just bad. This one's not bad. It's just not that great.
kind of
So
forgettable.
you just kind of walk away going, eh. And that's worse than a really bad movie, because then you laugh at it and go, oh my God, what were these? Something like, Fatal Frames.
See, but I wouldn't go as far as saying that. I would say that this is a very standard Giallo attempt.
But it doesn't hit all the key elements.
It doesn't meet the expectations if you're a seasoned Giallo film goer or whatever.
When I was just glancing, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I'm just saying this one checks all the boxes. It's a very standard affair. You leave not really feeling either way about it. I don't think it's like boring in the way that like I will give it to you. Fatal Frames is in that fashion, right?
It's
like
long.
You leave and you're like, my God, this wasn't 6 hours or whatever. Like that I can give you. This one, I feel it's got at least enough hits where it's like, okay, like that was cool, and then you just move on.
When I was just glancing at his filmography, this was his first feature. Like the other two films he did prior to this are short films.
Okay,
They're like
so
this is his, and there was like a gap between, like he did like in 1970 and 71, he did like these first two like shorter films, and he had to wait until 1977 to kind of like have a shot at it. So yeah, I get the sense he was probably wanting to play it safe, wanting to check the boxes, not do anything, outside the lines.
And truthfully, had he been a little bit more adventurous, like an Argento or a Martino or whatever, Fulci in that regard, his name would be more discussed, right? But this is what he cranks out as his first offering from a studio that's probably clamoring to like revitalize this Italian specific genre. I think this is what you get, right? Yeah. Like as somebody that just wants to play it safe, wants to do a very, very serviceable movie that plugs you into the things that that are way better from an Argento movie or whatever. I think this one is just much more tame in that regard. And then we have to wait an extra year until we see, okay, this is what Bido can do, So I don't think of this movie as a bad movie. I just think that it's in comparison to what we've seen and what we've come accustomed to.
It's a perfectly fine cheese sandwich.
There you go.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like it does, aside from the nudity, which we discussed, it does have a lot of the genre elements that we've come to expect, but it just goes to show that you can have a movie that has everything that a movie like this is supposed to have, and you come away with it with a completely different, emotion or reaction to it. I was flat out bored during parts of this because I got the sense that, once you get into the 19th red herring character that we come across, it's, for me, it starts to sink in. Whatever the resolution is going to be is not going to be worth all this chatter. Turns out I was wrong, because that revelation was like, where did that come from? This is awesome. Right. But normally I'm like, I don't really care. I'm checking out. I'm going to check Twitter for a while.
Big Swifty had a fun comment with the soundtrack.
Oh, yeah, let's bring that up. Thank you. What's up with the soundtrack? Apparently, I Googled Trans Europa Express, hopefully not on a work computer. Seems like it was just a group of studio musicians who made background music for European films, not a real band or group.
Interesting. So maybe that explains why, this sounds exactly like
Goblin. Because they're doing like Muzak versions of,
right.
Goblin.
They probably were just coming off of Deep Red, and they were like, let's use that, but let's not pay the band or,
Right,
but
totally.
I will say, like, as somebody that can very, very much watch a movie on its own merits and just hang back and just kind of, surf the vibes that you get that are Giallo specific or whatever, this movie didn't really have that for me. So I do get that it was very tedious to watch, right? But there are kills that kind of, just like the look of the killer, and then as soon as he comes on screen, the music happens. Like that kind of, I don't know about you guys, that excites me when I watch a movie like this. But there's just not the payoff that you would get from a strip nude, for your killer kind of thing, or like it's trying to do those things, but it's not necessarily leaving a lasting memory of what it's doing.
Well, two points. One, when we do see the killer, typically it's like the hand peeling back the red curtain. That was one. And you notice they're wearing like white latex gloves instead of black gloves. It almost gives the hand like a doll-like feel. So I was like, is there some kind of like a doll fetish involved in here? That's kind of fun. But then the other point I want to make is if this movie had Edwidge Finnick in it, it would have been a 9 out of 10 easily.
Yeah, 100%. I'm right there with you. But like if we go off and watch something like Black Belly of the Tarantula, right, for the next movie, you'll see that it's like, oh, okay, this is riffing off of like a much better concept that Black Belly is like providing. You know what I mean? Like Black Belly is a lot more like if you talk about these films in Giallo circles, Black Belly of the Tarantula is always mentioned. It's one of those iconic movies from the 70s that like oh my god, the performers, the music, everything about it just screams Giallo. Whereas this one, not really discussed other than like refined seasoned Giallo fans or whatever. But it's not necessarily like worth a second mention or like a delving into it like we just did for an hour. I think it's one of those movies that if you watch it, great. If not, great, right? Like you're not missing anything like that extraordinary. But I think if you've seen it all, this definitely deserves a look. So,
well, I think that's an apt point. And it made me think about something that I had just kind of mentioned. But I think why watch this movie? I think if you were to find whatever would be the perfect counterpoint to this that has all the elements that this has, but is done in a more exciting way. If you want to get academic about it or academic about it, you could say, watch these two movies side by side and pick out what makes one successful.
Watch these six movies. Watch these six movies side by side.
but just notice why one succeeds and one doesn't. Yeah,
right.
Because I feel like the differences are subtle, but they're significant. Yeah,
very significant. And if you also take into account that this is Bido's first feature film, and then he comes out with Bloodstained Shadow a year later, it's like it almost makes it worthwhile to see what he was working with this one, like in comparison to that one. And then you watch Black Belly of the Tarantula or Death Walks on High Heels or whatever, and then try to tie it into this movie. You're like, okay, this is exactly what these producers were thinking when they made this movie, and then they hired this guy to direct it.
It was interesting watching the opening credits and going, I don't recognize any of these names. Like that was that was a new experience. Based on the shows that we've seen or that we've done. I was like, oh wow, I don't know anybody in this.
And then like in that late in the game, right? Like who are you getting anymore? In terms of like people that maybe just want to do something different at that point, or they've moved on significantly. Now it's like, okay, well, we're just gonna cast it with people that we don't know.
Right.
They're much cheaper.
Is that a warning sign? Like if you put on a Giallo movie, you don't recognize the names. Is it time to is a safety to turn back?
Mean, like because Pupa Avati, like House of Laughing Windows, like we didn't know anybody there, and that was, that turned out pretty good.
Right. Okay, then the answer is no.
If I'm not mistaken, on the print that I watched, the opening credits consisted of the main actress, the main actor, directed by, and that was it. There was no.
Well, you watched the VCI one, which
that's what I'm saying. So then the Synapse must be a different version.
Yeah, there was full credits that I was like going, I don't know anybody in this. Yeah,
because I noticed that going. Okay, it's 3 people. Awesome.
And now, in your version, John, was it like a whole thing, like in this one, where it was like we just witnessed this thing, and now it's like this kind of production?
That was another thing. Like we had like this weird kind of like video reveal of "Watch Me When I Killed." Is that I was like, that doesn't feel like that was the right, or that it was the same film elements. It felt like they just had this like projection.
Yeah.
Great. Now I'm going to have to go watch it again. to
No,
find
no,
out.
no.
Can we cover the same movie again next time? That way I can see an updated version.
It will be Thanksgiving.
We'll cover it in a sheet so we don't walk through it on accident. But no,
Well played.
thank you. All right. Well, we are just about at the hour. So
Wow, really?
Congratulations, you guys. High
We
five. High five.
vamped. Yeah.
Let's wait until we got 15 more seconds. Everybody goes, yes, no, click, done.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you pad out a show.
Seriously.
And I'm glad we didn't get too far into Halloween Ends because I vowed I was never going to talk about that movie again.
Can we mention that nobody's tied this into a certain summer camp movie?
That's true. You know what? I was gonna wait until we went down, like before we blanked out.
And we're done. Thanks, everybody.
I have one reference, but it is so inappropriate that
Oh, wow.
I will only say that it involves the word camp, and I'm not going to go there. Anyhow, but yes, this might be a record. I did not bring up Friday the 13th once, which should be a sign. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're good here. I enjoyed I've enjoyed talking about this with you guys much more than I did the experience of watching.
Same here.
I think this was a good show, to tell you the truth. Like,
it was, even though we ended
than
up
the
talking about a
movie.
movie that we didn't think we were actually going to be talking about. Considering that.
even though I was like low key, like in the beginning of all this, I was at Home Depot, like around, I don't know, 1:30ish, right? Picking up some stuff for the house.
You're like, what if I didn't make it to the show?
We would
the guy
find
that
you.
recommended. Because the thought did occur to me. I was like, do I need to be on this show?
You do, sir.
Yes, to answer for your crime.
Account for yourself.
We would have found you.
Like, we're gonna be Skyping into wherever Brian is right now. We're gonna go to Home Depot, everybody.
So, like, if you notice, like, I showed up and I was like kind of looking around to see when it was gonna start, you know. But no,
if we
like,
had gone at Home Depot, that would have been a new version of Terror in the Aisles. We're going to find you, Brian. But no, so yeah, I think we're just about done. We got a lot of possibilities to talk about for next month and for our year-end show. I definitely want to look into getting Troy's book, and if I can read it in time and have him on to talk about it and talk about a Lindsay film, that would be amazing. So got to cook up some plans. In the meantime, thank you guys for hanging out for another Sunday live stream. Thanks everybody who tuned in, especially Big Swifty for all the great comments and things to think about. And if you are out there and you liked this, please like the video, the live stream, and subscribe to the channel. And also check out I was going to say filmographies, but webographies, I guess, of all my lovely and talented guests. We got John Kitley from Kitley's Crypt. We got Brian Martinez from the Giallo Room, AC of Horror 101 with Dr. AC, and I am, as always, Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. And this has been the latest edition of Accademia Giallo. Class dismissed.